This is Reah, and this is Just the Who of Us, where we talk about a range of topics including life events, current events, spirituality, entertainment, family relationships, as well as answering listener questions and more. I thought that you would be absolutely perfect for this conversation. So, welcome, and I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to, share some strategies for people who are grieving during the holidays because they, are challenging for sure.
Yeah, there's so many types of grief. There's so many types of relationships that you can grieve. I've had in previous episodes discussed even grieving relationships with people that are still alive. That's something that last holiday season I kind of experienced myself, and so I like to have people come and talk about kind of like different aspects of grief because there are so many. But for you in particular, you have experienced a kind of loss that I haven't. And so this isn't something that I would be able to talk to you from experience. So it makes it extra special that you're here to give this kind of outside perspective and something that a lot of us ask ourselves, or wonder if I ever went through this, how would I get through it?
Hmm.
And this is a special kind of grief that it takes a really strong person to kind of offer that guidance. So you are new to my audience. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you specialize in.
Okay. So I am a mental health therapist for a job, for my day job. I work with children. I have been doing that around 20 years now. And then I published a book called The Almost Miracle Years, which is a memoir talking about I had to fight two very different but fatal afflictions with my children. Um, and so the book is about, going through those experiences as well as coping with, yeah, ultimately, I lost both my children about 5 years apart. So talking about, going through the grief process, finding, beauty in the story and the time that I did get to spend with them, and also what I can do moving forward to continue to honor them and keep them as very much a part of my life.
Yeah, I love that. Like I said, this is something that I think most of us think that if it happened to us, it's kind of this impossibility. Specifically, obviously for those of us who haven't experienced this type of grief, and absolutely talk about as little or as much as you like. Do you mind talking briefly about what happened with your children? What
No,
caused their passing?
yeah. So what happened with my daughter? She was diagnosed with cancer when she was 8 years old. And the first time she did treatment, we were in the hospital for about 9 months, and that's kind of the day to day is kind of detailed in the first part of my book. And then she was in remission for 5 years, and she was doing really well. And prior to her diagnosis at age 8, my son had started struggling with addiction about age 12. So right when I kind of got him back on track, then his sister got diagnosed with cancer. So then there's that period of time where I lived in the hospital and his needs kind of got pushed to the side
Mhm.
because like we were basically living there. So
Yeah.
of course he struggled more. And then when she was in remission, then I dealt with his issues, and then I got him treatment. And then for about a 5 year period, the kids were doing well. Mackenzie was in remission. Kyler, my son was, he managed to finish high school and kind of keep that addiction at bay. And then what actually happened that was a big factor in what happened with my kids was my husband that I was married to at the time. He just kind of up and fled the country with no warning, and didn't
Oh,
really didn't really take any belongings, and kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. So, and he wasn't their father. We did have a blended family, so he had a daughter. So it was kind of a very sudden, like overnight thing. Very,
Yeah.
and then my son relapsed pretty hard. Because like we lost the stepfather plus his daughter because she had to go live with her mother, right?
Yeah.
Um, so then he relapsed really, really hard, and then I had to ask him to leave my home because Mackenzie at that time was 12, and I'd come home from work and there'd be kind of shady people in my house, so I asked him to leave, and he went to go stay with his grandparents. And then about a month after that, Mackenzie relapsed. Her leukemia came back. And then
Mm.
the second round, we had to go to a different city for treatment for her to have a stem cell transplant. And I mean, during that time, my son was still in Edmonton living with friends, and I was in Calgary. And uh, I almost lost her several times in Calgary. It was very rough. But eventually she, got well enough to come back home. So then there was a few months where she was doing pretty good. She was pretty healthy. And then one day her routine blood works had said her bone marrow was empty. So then we had to go back to Calgary. It wasn't as intense of a treatment. It was just a simple infusion. And then we thought she was good and she was doing well for a few months. And then her body started rejecting the transplant. So she had graft versus host disease. Um, and she basically, for 2 years, just got sicker and sicker. It was attacking her liver, and then she was jaundiced. It was attacking her lungs, and then she was immunocompromised, and we were like living in and out of the hospital for about 2 years. And then about 10 days before she passed away, she wanted to have a Halloween party for my boyfriend's kids, so she did that. She was really weak. I remember we were in Dollarama, and she fell over because she was so weak, like getting the decorations for this Halloween party. But she had this awesome Halloween party. She did all the games, she did all the crafts, she made snacks, she told scary stories. And at the end of the Halloween party, she's like, "Mom, I have to go to the ER. I can't breathe."
Oh,
So
wow.
then we had already had an appointment the next morning. So I just stayed with her in her room that night. And then the next morning, we went to the hospital, and they had said, Mackenzie, when kids are this sick, sometimes their heart stops. Do you want us to pound on your chest and put a tube down your throat? And she said no. So I called her dad, and he agreed that we wouldn't make her get revived if that happened. So
Yeah.
um, and we thought she had a couple months, actually. Like the doctors got her another wish, but it was once I gave her permission, 10 days later she's gone. So and Kyler, when I told him what was going on, he ran to the hospital, stocking feet from his drug dealer's house. Like he was in rough shape. It was really hard on him.
Yeah.
And then at her funeral, the day of her service, he actually tried to commit suicide, and he didn't. He was not successful, thank God. And then I had arranged for him to go to rehab again, and then he started the methadone program.
Hmm.
And then it was still pretty wild. I'd have to call police on him every now and then or kick him out. But when he switched treatments, he went to Suboxone treatment. He was actually doing really well. He was sober. He said he wanted to go to college. I was so shocked. Like I was like, whoa. So
Yeah.
he started taking courses to be an addiction counselor. He was doing really well. I was getting straight A's. And then there was an incident where he was on the train and he lipped off a gang, I guess, and then they kind of jumped him and gave him a pretty good beating. And then for the next week or so, he kept saying, "Mom, I can't breathe. Like I'm in so much pain." Like, and so he started taking himself to ERs, and because of his addiction history, they were just sending him home.
Yeah.
So then his last ER visit, he went home about 2 in the afternoon, and then he called me and he said, "They sent me home again. I don't know why I can't breathe. I don't know why I'm in so much pain." And then I was going to bring him a SIM card for a cell phone because his phone got stolen in the attack. And then the next morning, I found out on Facebook he was dead. I saw "Rest in peace, Kyler." His girlfriend had posted on Facebook. He was 25. And so I went to the house where he was, and it was a homicide investigation because of the assault. And then, so I couldn't see him. We had to wait for the coroner. And then ultimately the cause of death was a combination of pulmonary edema that was related to the assault, but also his girlfriend had given him something that had fentanyl in it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Um, wow. You know, there's a few kind of points that I would like to address that I think could be really beneficial. The first one, I want to give you, support. And I haven't, like I said, I haven't been in that situation myself, but
I would
I
like to
know.
hope not many people have.
Right, right. But it's very commendable as a mother to place boundaries. And for me myself looking, I could say, oh, I would or I wouldn't, whatever. We can all do that, right? But the people that I have talked to who have had a child struggle with addiction, it's kind of a mix of, well, I was able to stand my ground and I wasn't, because naturally, and as I imagine, kind of in the beginning of the process, it is difficult because you still want to believe that that child is at the forefront and not the addiction. I know, say with my own father, which is very different than, my own child, but with my father, he was an addict, he was an alcoholic, and it was hard for me to place boundaries until it wasn't, and it was kind of like, well, at some point I have to protect myself, I have to protect my children, and I can imagine that that would be the case for a mother in a situation where she has a child who's an addict. So I want to commend you for that, mother to mother, just because I can only imagine how hard that would be. But I think it's a really good kind of uh, topic for other mothers who may be going through the same situation, because that alone, that establishment of boundaries, it's so necessary, but it's so difficult. And it's difficult enough when it's other people, outside people. What kind of advice from your own experience can you give to women or even men who are listening and they have children who are struggling with addiction, no matter what kind of stage they may be at?
Well, what I learned with Kyler, like until he was actually like in a homeless shelter, that was what made him want to turn around. And I
Yeah,
mean, I put him in, like he was only 12, so obviously I wasn't gonna put him on the street at that point, but
yeah,
I was very like good with my boundaries. Like I pulled him out of school. I was like, you can't go there anymore. You're getting in trouble. I homeschooled him. I watched him. I got him all the therapy. But when it's gone to the point where, uh their rational mind is no longer, working because it's just about the substances, they need to fall flat on their face. And like even his friend, who they were kind of codependent, and his dad finally kicked him out about 2 years ago, and he's 27 now, and he said, my dad should have kicked me out a long time ago. like I finally,
yeah,
got my stuff together. So I mean, but I didn't, I don't know, I want to say it was a balance. Like I never cut him off. Like he would,
right.
if he was homeless and if he was, in rough shape, and I'd pick him up and I'd get him a haircut and go for a burger. I'd, give him some groceries, things like that. I just had a boundary with like, you can't be using it or selling when you're living in my home. So, I mean, and
Yeah,
if him, I would kick him out. So, and then towards the end, I mean, he was living with me until about a month before he came back. When he was going to school, he was doing well. And then he was only living on his own for about a month before he passed away. But the last 6 months he was living with me, it was fantastic. It was awesome.
yeah. Another kind of point I want to approach is something that I really have tried to drill into my kids over the years. Is that, for them, taking things from people, from other people, even people who you say are your friends, whether no matter what drug it may be, or even alcohol, or anything really, like being in social settings and being aware is so imperative because you never know. It's fentanyl has become such an epidemic, and so often it's ingested by people who don't even realize that that's what they're taking.
Mhm.
Um, I have a family member who became addicted to fentanyl, and it started with other drug use. And they were kind of, you know, introduced something was laced at one point. They didn't
Mhm.
know. They ended up in the hospital. Their kids got taken. Husband was in prison. Like everything just kind of fell apart. And they didn't even intend to do anything related to fentanyl. So it's such a it's such a it's a big deal.
It is
Like, yeah, it's a major issue, and
like
it's
it's in
all.
everything. Like you can't like I never was a drug user, but I know like my family were like back in the day. Well, like now you can't even experiment. It's too dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I mean, I smoked weed when I was in high school.
Mhm.
Um, but in 2025, and I was if in 2025 I was in high school, I wouldn't even try it, just because, like I got it from somebody in my neighborhood, and like I trusted them.
Mhm.
But even now, if that was me now, I like I just wouldn't, like,
It's
because
too dangerous.
it is, and a lot of times the people that you trust, you can't trust, especially when it comes to a drug dealer. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
probably not your most trustworthy friend. Um, because for one, your safety and your health is not a concern. Making money is typically. So it's like, but yeah, it's a big issue. I want to talk a little bit about kind of noticing signs, but before that, I want to point out that as parents, our kids don't tell us everything. Like, our kids who tell us everything don't tell us everything, right? And it's, I've gone through a point in my parenting where I've been a little naive.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe like my oldest will point something out, like, so and so, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Nothing, never anything like crazy, crazy, but I'm like, oh, I guess I don't know everything, and even though it might be little things, but
Mhm.
they live their own separate lives, and when people want to hide things, they intentionally hide things. So, as a parent, if you find out things, or your child, has an addiction or struggles with something that you aren't aware of, and you are an attentive and available parent, you can't beat yourself up about it, because like I said, people who want things hidden, they intentionally hide things.
Mhm.
However, was there anything that you noticed that kind of stood out to you? Behavioral changes, academic changes, anything that was kind of like, oh, this might need some looking into.
He was he actually started before he started using drugs. I think he had just a very highly addictive personality. So he started with his friends egging houses.
Hmm.
And I think he was addicted to the adrenaline because no matter what consequence, like he just didn't like he nothing worked to get him to stop doing that. And then he discovered actually it was started out with cigarettes. Um, so because like right now weed is legal in where I live, but back then it wasn't. And
Yeah.
then so we started, I don't know if he, I don't know who gave him cigarettes, but then because like when I discovered what was going on, I went through all his Facebook messages, and that's how I kind of got the timeline.
Okay.
So it started with cigarettes, but then weed at the time was illegal, and it was easier to get than cigarettes because kids could. You need ID to get cigarettes, but you don't need ID
Right.
to get weed, right? So then it started with
Yeah.
marijuana, and then he became very like it was all he talked about. It was like he wasn't like, "Hi, I'm a pothead," but it was like, "Oh, you can get hemp milk and you can wear hemp clothes." Like he was really obsessed about it, and he talked
Oh,
about.
wow.
And then and then it was alcohol. So it was like weed and alcohol. Um, we were drinkers, so there was alcohol in the home, and I didn't realize at the time that my ex husband would let him drink sometimes. Like I didn't know that, but Kyler told me later. Um, so it kind of started with the, letting him drink when he was, young, and then he found the weed at school. And then, I mean, when I realized what a huge problem it was, I like took away his bus pass, I took away his phone, I turned off the Wi-Fi, I drove him to school, and I just dropped him off at the front door, and he'd just go out the back door, go to the mall, go to the Apple store, get drugs on the Facebook Messenger. So, I mean, it was that inability for him to control himself was a really big symptom.
Yeah.
Um, and then just like his attitude had really changed. Um, he used to be the kid that would call me from his friend's house and say, "Mom, am I allowed to have pop?" Like he used to be like that. And then it went into like, "Oh, what? It's just weed. Oh, it's just a plant, blah, blah, blah." So like, um, yeah, it was really like it was evident very fast how addictive his personality was because it was like the egging houses, cigarettes, weed, alcohol, and
Yeah.
then it got to he was using Xanax was his major drug of choice, but most of that Xanax is laced right with opiates,
Yeah.
right? So then
Yeah.
it was Xanax was when he was completely out of control, like, and then he wouldn't remember, right? Because he was on Xanax. So, um, but yeah, it started that way, and then the opiate use, I think, like I don't think he was intentionally. I think it was the Xanax
Hmm.
because then he went on that methadone and the Suboxone really helped, but he wasn't like a guy that was looking for oxys or Vicodins. He was always Xanax, but
Huh.
they're fake pills, right? Like they
Right. Yeah.
so I'm pretty sure that's how he got hooked on the opiates.
So it's that addictive and impulsive
Mhm.
personality, and those things start to change and kind of escalate and progress from one thing to another that
Mhm.
really stands out.
Yeah, it
Um,
was like watching a train accident. Like it just kept like getting worse and worse, like really
yeah,
fast.
yeah. Um, I know we have it's kind of a lot to unpack in a short period of time, but I want to kind of move on a little bit to our, grief focus through the holidays. And as we mentioned, there are various ways to grieve. For you, you have your daughter battling cancer, son battling addiction, and then also the grief of a relationship, kind of multiple relationships. How, what advice can you give to my audience in relation to handling and managing grief through the holidays, specifically? Because for a lot of people, and not everybody, because different people celebrate different holidays or don't. Some people go on vacation around the holidays. There's different kind of components to that, but there are a lot of people who, for us, the holidays like family time. Family time. We're doing a lot of activities with kids or with family, and all these kind of things. It's very busy, and it can be difficult to successfully grieve because you're kind of expected to be so busy sometimes, or because there's so much going on and it can kind of become overwhelming to where you just kind of want to step away and do nothing. And then,
Mhm.
that can create this depression and isolation and things like that. Is that something that you have experienced? And if it has, what can you, what kind of advice can you give to my listeners to help navigate through that that
Yeah,
experience?
yeah. So I actually lost I ended up losing my dad and my grandfather in between my daughter and my son. So
Oh,
I lost my dad 4 months after my daughter, and then my grandfather about a year after that. And those were like the people I did the holidays with. So I lost all my holiday people. So the first year I was with I lost Mackenzie. I was with a partner, and he really kind of forced me to participate in the holidays, and that was horrible. Like that was horrible. So then um after we split up, I didn't I refused to do any holidays. I just didn't. I would be like, it's Thanksgiving, I'm gonna order skip the dishes and watch Netflix and like pretend it's not Thanksgiving.
yeah.
And then when my son came home and was doing well, I started doing it for him because I thought it's not fair. He doesn't get holidays. So then I was just getting right back into it. And then when he passed away, and then my first year without him, I learned from my daughter, like, I'm not going to force myself to do these things if I don't want to. So I did like a little bit, but I really was okay to stay home and not really participate. And then this last Christmas, I was just like, I have to look at my family now as like maybe it's not just my blood relatives. Like I do have some good friends. So I did, go out and celebrate Christmas with my girlfriend. She had Christmas dinner, and it's just different. Like I found that doing something different was better than doing the same thing and noticing the empty chairs. But having said that, since the kids passed away, I honor them. I make them a stocking. I'll set a chair for them. Like if there is a family gathering, I talk about them. Um,
I love that.
and I'm going to always do that.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. My grandmother passed last year, and my mom called me one night and she was like, I can't sleep because I keep waking up seeing my mom's face. And she actually watched my grandma pass. And so she told me, she's like, I can't sleep. I just keep waking up, just kind of having this dream of her passing in front of me and waking up like freaking out. And I said, well, can I suggest that you take a picture of her that you have when she was having a fun time, a fun event, enjoying herself, and keep that in the bed with you. And then when you wake up and you're having this horrible memory, you look at that picture and you remember her in a happy, healthy place again. And she did it, and it really helped. And I think that I really like that suggestion. Include them if that makes you feel good, include them in that tradition. Also, the thing that you said about not having to go is really important as well. It's one thing I typically talk about this time of year. We don't have to do everything, right? And like I've also been guilty of, after my husband's mom passed, kind of like forcing him to go to my family events. And for me, it was like, yeah, but I think this will help you feel better because it makes me feel good. I enjoy it. So then you should come too. And it's something at one point he told me, he was like, I can't do that because it's painful for me. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that it would kind of have this adverse effect on you. And so it's really important to understand that we don't have to attend things. We can politely tell people, hey, I appreciate the invite, but I won't be able to make it, or, whatever the case may be. You don't have to give them a speech. You don't have,
I just said I'm canceling Christmas. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. And things can be different. Like that's okay too. Like my Christmas last year, I'm used to my mom's whole family getting together.
Mhm.
And last year we didn't. And so I had Christmas at my house. And I had a friend of mine and her family come. My mom, some other people came, and it was great. And it was different. It was a little difficult because it was so different than what I'm used to, but it was also a wonderful day, and so it's okay to do things differently. And, people can understand or they cannot understand. They might also be going through their own grief in relation to yours or not, and that's okay. It's just an important time to just kind of be in the moment that makes you happy.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's okay to cry. It's okay to
yeah,
be sad. Like that's totally fine. Like you can
yeah,
be sad and miss them and honor them and and that's okay. And then like to get through it, like I thought, last year was pretty great. Like I went to my friend, it wasn't like the same experience, but I didn't, Grinch last year.
yeah,
But and then I also realized like I don't know how many more years I have left on this earth. I mean, I can't always just be like that, but initially it's pretty raw. And I think it's okay,
yeah,
like whatever you want to do. Some people like to, do it for distraction. Some people find it too painful.
yeah,
Some people want to do something completely different, So I kind of did a mixture of all those things in the past, like since in the past 7 years, I've kind of done a version of, something a little different, not
yeah,
doing anything, doing it with
right.
different people, but always honoring my kids. Always, yeah. Like I just buy their stocking. Like I just buy things like edible things for the like, like the pop they liked or whatever. And
Oh,
I hang
that's cool.
up and I think about them. And then over that time between Christmas and New Year's, I'll, here you go. I'm drinking your root beer, Kyler. Like, just
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
yeah.
Um, so you also provide grief recovery coaching, correct?
Yeah. I'm a
Okay.
grief recovery coach. So yeah, I like to help people. I did that modality as a client and then I found it helpful to kind of organize your thoughts and feelings around certain losses. So I thought I would try and give back because I mean, obviously I had kind of a shitty hand dealt, but I'm trying
Right.
to take some lessons from it and enrich other people's lives by sharing those tools.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's kind of our goal for most of us as coaches is to take something that we've experienced in life and learn from and help other people do the same thing. Okay. I think so. Oh, yeah. Do you have any, you know, general coping strategies? I know we discussed a few things, honoring the past loved one or the deceased loved one through special honoring them for special occasions. Um, do you have any other coping strategies that you would like to put out there before we wrap up?
Oh, for sure. One thing that I did like at the very, very beginning of my grief, was I made a to-do list every day, like, and it seemed like kind of, minimal, but it would be like go for a walk, find a flower that you think is pretty, make supper, make a plan for a coffee date. And because I was off work, right? So then I found that planning those little things out gave my day kind of structure and purpose. And it allowed me like, and when I did those things on my list, I was like, okay, this is my break. Like I'm gonna try and not think about the kids, or I'm gonna just enjoy this dinner, or I'm just gonna, you know, only think happy thoughts for this period of time. And some days it was, only 5 minutes, and some days it might be a few hours. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I really found that that was I don't know, I was like, I needed to write it on a piece of paper and cross it off. And then, some days it's like, get dressed, have a shower,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
go to the gym. Like, so I really focused on self-care. I got lots of massages. I got my nails done. Like I really tried to do little kind things for myself and then tried to enjoy, whatever, however long I was doing that thing. So I wasn't just constantly, you know, in duress. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are great. Because too, when we're grieving, we can kind of forget to take care of ourselves because we get so focused on our grief. Is there anything else that I didn't cover that you wanted to talk about?
oh, just the title of my book and where to get it. And my
Yes.
Yeah. So my book is called The Almost Miracle Years. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, and Lulu. And then my website is just my name, adriennebender.com. So ADRIENNEBENDER.com.
Okay, perfect. And I was gonna ask to where everybody can find you. Do you have any socials or anything that you want to share?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn as my just my name, Facebook, just my name, and Instagram, I'm ADBends, like so ADYBENDS.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experiences and being so vulnerable and open. I really appreciate it, and sharing these coping strategies and kind of introducing us to who you are and what you do. And again, I just really appreciate your vulnerability. So thank you so much for being here.
And thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Check us out on YouTube at Reah Higgs, ReahHagues. You can also keep up with us on Instagram at Just the Who Podcast.